I watched from my kitchen window as Brenda, the queen bee of the Homeowners Association, knelt on her perfectly manicured lawn, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury as she yanked a stubborn sprig of mint from the base of her prize-winning rose bush. But let me back up and tell you how it all began. My name is Clara Hemlock. I am 42 years old, and my story of suburban revenge starts not with a bang, but with a patch of dead dirt. 2 years ago, my husband David passed away, leaving me alone in our house in Willow Creek, Ohio, a place we'd chosen for its supposed peace and quiet. It's one of those newer developments where every house looks vaguely the same, a sea of beige siding and identical mailboxes. David had been the gardener, the one with the green thumb. He could make anything grow. I, on the other hand, could kill a plastic plant just by looking at it too hard. He had always taken care of the yard, and after he was gone, I did my best to keep it up, mowing the lawn and pulling the most obvious weeds. It was my way of holding onto a piece of him. The front yard was manageable, but the backyard was another story entirely. Behind our house was a steep, awkward slope, a sort of embankment that the builders had carved out of the hill. The soil was more like construction-grade clay than actual dirt, and the afternoon sun beat down on it with a relentless, scorching intensity. David had called it the blight. He detried everything: hardy ground covers, drought-resistant grasses, even wildflowers. Nothing ever took. It was a barren, ugly scar on an otherwise perfect-looking property, a constant reminder of failure. For the first year after he was gone, nobody seemed to care. My neighbors were kind, offering condolences and casseroles, and no one mentioned the blight. Then, the Homeowners Association's compliance committee got a new chairperson. Her name was Brenda, a woman in her late 50s with a perfectly coiffed helmet of blonde hair, a perpetual tan, and an unshakable belief that her personal preferences were community law. She was always armed with a clipboard and a measuring tape, flanked by her two loyal lieutenants, Carol and Susan. I called them the Compliance Coven. The first notice appeared taped to my front door on a Tuesday morning. It was printed on thick, cream-colored paper, embossed with the official community logo. In stern, black letters, it cited a violation of Section 7.3 of the Community Charter: failure to maintain adequate green coverage on all parts of the property. It specifically mentioned the rear embankment and gave me 30 days to rectify the situation or face a $50 fine. I was more annoyed than worried. I figured it was a simple misunderstanding. That afternoon, I saw Brenda marching down the sidewalk on her daily patrol. I went out to meet her, forcing a polite smile. "Brenda, hi," I said, holding up the notice. "I just wanted to talk to you about this. That slope in my backyard, it's impossible. My late husband tried for years to get anything to grow there." Brenda stopped and adjusted her visor, looking at me over the top of her sunglasses. She tapped her pen on her clipboard. "Clara," she said, her voice dripping with condescending sympathy, "we all have our challenges. The community standards are quite clear. The area needs to be green. It's an eyesore and it brings down the aesthetic value for everyone." "I understand that," I said, my patience already fraying. "But the soil is terrible. The grading is wrong. It's a builder issue, not a maintenance issue." "The builder is long gone," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "The responsibility falls to the homeowner. You have 30 days, Clara. I'm sure you'll figure something out." And with that, she turned and continued her march, leaving me standing there feeling small and frustrated. So began my war with the blight. My first attempt was with grass seed. I went to the local garden center and spent over $200 on the most expensive, toughest-sounding seed mix they had: Sun and Shade Extreme Duty. I spent a whole weekend tilling the hard-packed clay as best I could, mixing in bags of topsoil and carefully scattering the seeds. For the next 3 weeks, I watered it religiously, morning and night, dragging the hose up that stupid hill. A few pathetic green shoots actually appeared. I felt a surge of hope. But the first real Ohio heat wave of the summer hit, and within a week, every last one of those brave little sprouts had shriveled, turned brown, and died. Right on cue, a second notice from the Homeowners Association arrived. This one was sharper in tone. "This is your second notice regarding violation 7.3. Failure to comply within 15 days will result in a $100 fine." My annoyance had now curdled into real anger. I wasn't going to be beaten by a patch of dirt and a power-tripping committee. My next move was sod. It was a huge expense, nearly $400 for enough rolls to cover the entire slope. It was backbreaking work. I had to haul the heavy, damp rolls up the hill one by one, unrolling them and patting them into place like a giant, grassy quilt. For 2 days, it looked amazing. It was green. It was perfect. I took a picture and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. But the blight was patient. The sod, deprived of any real nutrients from the clay beneath it and baked by the sun, began to yellow at the edges. Despite my constant watering, the yellow spread inward. Within a month, I was the proud owner of a very expensive, perfectly rectangular patch of dead, brown turf. The third notice came. This time, the fine was $200, with a warning that continued noncompliance could lead to further action. I was starting to panic. This was no longer just about the yard. It was becoming a significant financial drain. I decided I needed a professional. I found a local landscaper, a grizzled old guy named Gus with dirt permanently etched into the lines of his hands. He came out, took one look at the slope, kicked at the dead sod with his boot, and let out a low whistle. He spent 20 minutes taking soil samples and measuring the angle of the sun. Finally, he came back to my patio, took off his hat, and wiped his brow. "Ma'am," he said, looking at me with honest, pitying eyes, "I can take your money if you want. I can bring in a truckload of topsoil, install a sprinkler system, and lay the best sod money can buy. It'll cost you a few $1,000s." He paused, letting that sink in. "And I guarantee you by this time next year it'll be just as dead as that is." He pointed at the brown patch with his thumb. "The grade is too steep, the drainage is non-existent, and that clay gets baked into brick by noon. Some places just ain't meant to be green. The fella who built this place should have put in a retaining wall with some rock garden plants, not a lawn." I paid him his $80 consultation fee, and he left. His professional opinion was a strange mix of vindication and despair. I was right all along, but it didn't matter. I was still facing fines from the Homeowners Association. I felt completely and utterly defeated. I tried to appeal to the committee again, this time in writing, enclosing a summary of Gus's expert opinion. The response was a cold, form letter stating that expert opinions do not supersede community bylaws and that my fines were now due. I was at my lowest point. The fines were adding up, and the letters were getting more threatening, now mentioning things like legal action and property liens. It felt like I was being bullied into doing the impossible. I was losing sleep, constantly worrying about the next letter, the next demand. It felt like they were trying to force me out of my own home, the last place I felt connected to David. One night, unable to sleep, I was scrolling through my phone at 2 in the morning, falling down a rabbit hole of internet forums. I was on a gardening subreddit, of all places, reading tales of woe from other people fighting impossible yards. And that's when I saw it. It was a small, almost hidden comment in a long thread about erosion control. Someone mentioned a product called Bad Apple's Double Mint Seed Bombs. The commenter wrote, "Careful with these, they'll solve your erosion problem, but they'll create a mint problem. The stuff is impossible to kill and spreads like wildfire." A tiny, wicked idea began to sprout in the barren soil of my exhausted mind. I clicked the link. The website was sketchy, full of over-the-top claims and pictures of impossibly lush green hillsides. The product description for the Double Mint Bombs claimed they were a professional-grade erosion control solution designed for aggressive establishment in challenging terrain. It promised to thrive where all else fails. The key words jumped out at me: erosion control, green coverage, aggressive establishment. I pulled out the original violation notice from the drawer where I kept the growing stack of hostile mail. I read the wording very carefully. Establish adequate green coverage using appropriate plant materials for erosion control. It didn't say what kind of plants. It didn't say grass. It just said green and appropriate for erosion control. A slow smile spread across my face. I did a quick search on mint. It turns out, mint is an incredible plant for erosion control. It grows a dense network of underground runners, called rhizomes, that hold soil in place. It thrives in poor conditions. It requires almost no care. And it is, without a doubt, very, very green. Technically, it checked every single box the Homeowners Association had demanded. It was malicious compliance in its purest, most beautiful form. For $35, I ordered a pack of 5 seed bombs. They arrived a week later in a plain brown box. Each bomb was a clod of dried dirt, clay, and seeds about the size of a golf ball. The instructions were simple: throw and go. The following Friday evening, under the cloak of twilight, I went into my backyard. I felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years, a sense of righteous purpose. I stood at the bottom of the blight, took out the first seed bomb, and with all the frustration and anger I'd been storing up for months, I hurled it toward the top of the slope. I threw the other 4 like grenades, ensuring they were spread out across the barren wasteland. It was deeply, deeply satisfying. The next morning, I composed an email to Brenda and the rest of the compliance committee. I wrote, "Dear committee members, this email is to inform you that I have taken action to resolve the issue cited in violation 7.3. I have deployed a professional-grade erosion control solution featuring premium mint varieties, specifically selected for their aggressive establishment and superior coverage capabilities in challenging terrain. I trust this will bring my property into full compliance with community standards." I read it over twice. It sounded so official, so professional. I hit send and went to make a cup of coffee, feeling smugger than I had in my entire life. For a few weeks, nothing happened. I started to worry that, like everything else, the mint had failed. But then, one morning after a good rain, I saw them. Tiny clusters of bright green leaves pushing their way up through the cracked clay. Within a month, the sparse clusters had become a thick, lush carpet. The blight was gone. In its place was a vibrant emerald green hillside. The air around it carried a faint, pleasant, minty scent. It was beautiful. A week later, one of Brenda's lieutenants, Carol, did her weekly compliance walkthrough. I watched from my window as she paused at the edge of my property, looking up at the slope. She made a note on her clipboard, and then, to my astonishment, she gave a little nod of approval before moving on. The violation notices stopped. The fines ceased. I had won. I had tamed the blight and silenced the Homeowners Association. I spent the rest of the summer enjoying my victory, feeling clever and vindicated every time I looked out my back window. But mint, as I was about to learn, does not believe in property lines. As fall approached, I started noticing things. A small sprig of mint popping up in my next-door neighbor's flower bed, right by the fence. Then another, a little further away. I realized with a jolt that the underground runners, the rhizomes, were tunneling under the fence and staging an invasion. I kept quiet. This was not my problem. By the following spring, the situation had escalated dramatically. The mint was no longer just in my yard. It was everywhere. It was growing in the manicured mulch around the community mailboxes. It was sprouting in the cracks of the sidewalk along the walking path. It had completely taken over the decorative flower beds at the grand entrance to our development, choking out the expensive seasonal flowers Brenda was so proud of. The entire neighborhood was being slowly, methodically colonized by my mint. The community Facebook group, once a sleepy place for lost pet announcements and ads for babysitters, exploded. Half the posts were furious residents complaining about the invasive weed that was taking over their lawns. The other half were people asking for recipes for mojitos and mint juleps, or asking where the best patches were for harvesting. The smell was the most incredible part. On warm days, the entire street smelled like a spa. The mailman commented on it, saying our block was his favorite on the route because it smelled so fresh. The Homeowners Association, of course, was having a complete meltdown. They hired a landscaping company to deal with the mint infestation. The company came, surveyed the situation, and basically told the board, "You have mint now. There's no getting rid of it without excavating the top 2 feet of soil from the entire neighborhood or using chemicals that would kill everything else too. Our advice? Learn to love it." They hired a second company, then a third. They all said the same thing. Brenda was losing her mind. She knew. She had to know it was me. But she couldn't prove it. And this is where my plan entered its final, most beautiful phase. In my late-night research, I hadn't just studied mint. I had studied the Homeowners Association Charter, the very document they had used to terrorize me, and I had found a little gem, a glorious foolproof clause. Section 4.2.7 of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association Charter explicitly prohibited the removal or disturbance of any vegetation, ground cover, or landscaping that originates from an individual property owner's plantings without the explicit written consent of said property owner. They could not touch a single leaf of the mint, because it all originated from my property. It was all one giant, interconnected plant, an organism of my creation. Removing it would be a direct violation of their own sacred rules. The last Homeowners Association meeting, according to my neighbor who attended for the sheer entertainment value, was a masterpiece of suburban chaos. 20 minutes were dedicated to a heated debate on aggressive aromatic species management. Brenda, looking haggard and defeated, proposed an emergency amendment to the charter to allow the board to remove nuisance plants. But charter amendments require a 75% approval from all homeowners. By now, my story had become a local legend. Most of my neighbors thought it was hilarious. They were enjoying the free, fresh herbs and the daily spectacle of Brenda's impotent rage. The amendment was voted down spectacularly. I now receive passive-aggressive emails from the General Homeowners Association account, clearly written by Brenda, about the importance of responsible planting and the dangers of introducing deliberately invasive species. But she can never name me. To do so would be to create a hostile community environment, which is, you guessed it, a violation of Section 214 of the Charter. Yesterday, I sat on my back patio, sipping a mint julep. The mint for it came from a particularly lush patch that had sprung up around the base of Brenda's mailbox. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over my backyard. My hill, my beautiful, defiant, and ridiculously green hill, was thriving. It was a living monument to my victory. The Homeowners Association wanted green coverage. I gave it to them. And now they get to live with it forever. I took another sip of my drink, a cool, sweet taste of victory, and watched as a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, sending the fresh scent of mint all across Willow Creek.